All right, can everyone see my screen okay? Excellent. So I think I saw on the website that some of you are interested in legitimacy as well as entrepreneurship in general. And I actually know a few of you from past conferences. So hi, everyone. Eating it with just one hand. So fantastic design. You can see that being very useful for somebody who, limited in being able to use two shoes to tie their shoe, so different impairments. But you could also see this being really useful for children who don't know how to tie their shoes, or just looking fashionable. This is a gorgeous shoe. But what was interesting is, this is a news title from May 5th, 2021. And the title is Disabled People Question Nike Over Fly Shoes. So we're already seeing kind of this, okay, what's going on here? This shoe looks like someone with an impairment might want to wear this. This is kind of an interesting looking shoe. It might benefit them. So what's going on here? There's another news article that came out and said, why won't Nike use the word disabled to promote its new Go Fly Ease shoe? So this is the name of the shoe. So now we're getting a better sense for why the disability population might be a little upset. We're realizing, oh, they're not using disabled to promote this shoe. Okay, what were they thinking? What are they doing? So I went back in time and kind of screenshotted for you how the website described this shoe in 2019. So here they're describing this shoe as designed for athletes of all abilities and ages. Okay, so disability is not used. It's for everyone, kind of like I described the shoe earlier. I would wear this shoe, and I can tie laces. So this is just a cool shoe for everyone. I think they were getting some pushback, so they updated their website in April 2020. They described the Fly Ease as a new standard in universal design. So we might have heard that phrase before when we're talking about disability products. And then they go on to say, we're reimagining the best of Nike footwear to expand access and unlock benefits for all athletes. Again, we're not seeing the word disability in any of this description so far. In April 2021, they described the shoe as the easy entry designs, expand access, and unlock benefits for all athletes. So once again, there's no disability. And then today, if you go to the website, it says Nike Fly Ease lets you enjoy sport no matter your ability with technology developed from insights from the disability community. So there we have it. There's something there about disability, but it's just saying, okay, we'll admit it. We got insights from the disability community. They helped us design this shoe, but it's still for everyone. So it's for no matter your ability, you can buy this shoe. So the key here, when I was, as a researcher, I'm like, hey, what did Nike do wrong? What's going on? We're in the disability space, so we might be cringing as we're reading these like original websites. And my thought was, okay, you could have an effective product, but it's not enough to garner support from stigmatized customers. They messed up somewhere. So what does it take to prove that you're in it, maybe for the right reasons and that you care about the community in some way? So where did Nike go wrong? Was it simply that they didn't use the word disability in their product? And maybe why did they not use the word disability? So that was kind of my jumping point with this investigation. So my research question was, how do social entrepreneurs garner legitimacy from stigmatized beneficiaries? And I focus here on social entrepreneurs because there's this amazing space where they are primarily targeting the disability community. And I thought, okay, this is some place where I can really investigate what are they actually doing. A more specific question is, how do social entrepreneurs in the adaptive apparel space, which is this clothing space designed for people with different impairments, garner legitimacy from the disability community? And the way I went about this is I used grounded theory, and the primary data set are 25 in-depth interviews with social entrepreneurs that represent 22 adaptive apparel brands. And these are brands that are in the US, Europe, India, Australia, across the world. So these adaptive apparel brands, many of them actually have an online platform and don't have a brick and mortar store, but some of them have had representation in like fashion type displays where they do runway shows and things like that. I don't know if anyone on here has seen some of these brands before. Give me a thumbs up if you have. Sometimes when I'm presenting this, people have never even heard of the term adaptive apparel. So it'd be fun if you guys have heard of it. So to give you a little context of it, there's some people in the fashion. Oh, good, Ashin, you've heard of this. That's great. There's some people in the fashion space that have written a little bit about adaptive apparel, and really the main idea is the clothing is designed for specific impairments. So it's typically related to closures. So buttons that are maybe magnetic instead of like harder to close buttons, maybe fit. So you can imagine if you are short statured, that you would have to make your clothing like different proportions and different fabrics. So you can imagine if you have autism sometimes, and even actually if you don't, the tags on some clothing are very uncomfortable. So it would be about making the fabric something that's not irritating or itchy and just nice to wear. The other thing beyond comfort is it just supports the ease of dressing. So it just makes getting dressed in the morning easier. And just to be upfront, most of these companies prior to 2015 were medicalized. So you can think of going to a hospital and using like a medical gown, and they weren't pretty. They were designed for functionality without this like aesthetic. But if you haven't kept up with it, this space is actually transitioning to very fashionable, beautiful space with amazing brands that are coming out with incredible stuff. What I want to highlight and what I think is really interesting to kind of build on what Glenn had described with this stigmatized identity, when you are selling a product where not everyone necessarily identifies as disabled, these it brings up some complications. So I'm identifying this market as kind of a stigmatized market. And the closest one I can just compare it to would be plus size clothing. So that's fashion that was designed, not small, medium, large. It was, extending the brand a little bit. And those companies, when they were trying to enter the market, people didn't want to shop at like a separate plus size fashion plus size store. There was like this stigma associated with either carrying those sizes or even admitting that you're necessarily plus size, until we had people and kind of embracing that movement and being like, big is beautiful and things like that. So you can imagine it's a similar context compared to that. So to give you a sense for what are these brands doing, I have a picture here of a woman who has dwarfism, and she's wearing this gorgeous black wrap tie dress. So the woman who designs brands for short-statured women has done incredible work. She has gone out and actually created new like busts of for dwarfism, so that the clothing can be on these new models. Because I mean, we're in this space, so we know that representation matters. It's important to see yourself in magazines, but it's also important when you're shopping to see, yourself in the store. And she was interesting when I was talking to her, because she said, when I first started this, I just thought, okay, people needed access to clothing, and I wasn't even thinking about, getting these models that were representative in stores. And now I realize the importance of that, so these people are really starting this movement. I now have a picture of a woman zipping like a very hidden zipper that's located between the shoulder and the neck, and that is giving access to a port. So if you are getting some kind of treatment, maybe it's chemotherapy, that a doctor can access that port easier than completely undressing. So you can imagine there's this level of kind of just dignity that these clothes provide. This next picture is actually an insulin belt, so that somebody who with diabetes can go work out, but then place their insulin pump in their belt and still look fashionable and be safe while working out. This next picture is a woman in a wheelchair, and she's covered the wheelchair with this gorgeous Lion King Simba art. So it's drawing attention to the wheel, but in a way that's beautiful and fun, instead of saying, oh, this is just a medicalized equipment. And this last picture is actually an ostomy bag cover, and it says, oh crap. So it's kind of bringing light on, something that you'd have to wear and maybe you wanted to hide, but now it's like, oh, this is fun and cute. So this is just a sense for some of the beautiful pieces that people are making. So just want to give you a brief overview of kind of where I was going with this question. So I was wondering how the social entrepreneurs were garnering legitimacy. And legitimacy is this generalized perception or assumption that the actions of an entity are desirable, proper, or appropriate with some socially constructed systems of norms, values, beliefs, and definitions. And when we think about legitimacy work, these are any tactics that someone is using to counter legitimacy challenges. So the things that the social entrepreneurs are actually doing to garner legitimacy. And I'm combining that with this idea that when somebody's making legitimacy judgment, that they're relying on three forms of legitimacy. And this is from Toast 2011. There's this instrumental legitimacy, which is primarily referring to effectiveness, efficiency. Can the social entrepreneur do this effectively? They're also relying on relational legitimacy. So are you actually affirming my collective identity, my social identity? Are you, and in this case, are you saying that the disability identity is a positive thing? Are you bolstering my self-worth? And then moral. So are you doing this for the right reasons? This refers to ethical values being viewed as pro-social. So here, when I was looking at the different legitimacy tactics that the social entrepreneurs were using, I specifically was looking at instrumental. This is really in regards to, can a social entrepreneur persuade customers that they can meet their dressing needs with adaptive apparel, whether that means destigmatizing their impairment, or does that mean that this clothing actually works? In terms of relational, this is the social entrepreneur fostering community and pride with the disability social identity? And then lastly, how can they show customers that they want to help and they're not simply interested in profiting off of disability culture? So these relational and moral were two extra things that Nike wasn't doing. They made a great product with that shoe in the beginning, this instrumental, like, okay, here's a product that works, you can slide on with one hand, but they weren't necessarily affirming the disability social identity, especially by removing it completely from the website. And they weren't necessarily persuading the community that they were in it for the right reasons. Go to the website, the shoe is very expensive, and there's no beyond what they have today, which is saying, okay, yeah, the disability community did help us design this. There wasn't a lot of saying we're in this, for the right reasons. So basically, I'm just trying to show you how my process of going through this question, I was interested in how the social entrepreneurs in the adaptive apparel space garner legitimacy from the disability community. And the major issue I ran into immediately, which maybe you already predicted, was that people that would be buying this product are identifying with disability in different ways. So you might have one customer that is disabled, capital D disabled, and they view the disability identity as super empowering. They belong to the community, they identify with the community, and they're expecting you to, promote disability in such a positive and empowering way. But then you might have people who would buy your product that have the impairment and could benefit from the clothing features, but don't identify as disabled. And this happened, I presume it happens because of stigma and this internalized ableism and the path that this person is on in their process, where they have not quite identified as disabled and don't want to buy a product that is labeled as a disability product. And then to layer onto that, they don't view disability identity as empowering. So you have this predicament that social entrepreneurs are facing, where some of their customers view it as very empowering, and some other customers don't. The other customer group are caregivers, and they kind of react similarly to those that just have an impairment. They don't necessarily care as much about empowering the disability identity. So the key findings here are that customers that have an impairment and the caregivers, they're really prioritizing that instrumental legitimacy. They're the ones that are buying Nike's shoe the way it is. All they care about is that, the product works. And they want you to reduce the stigma with their impairment. And what I'll share about a little bit later is they want you to reduce the stigma in a different way than the other group. So what's unique about capital D disabled, it's empowering, this is my identity, I really care about this, is they want you to prioritize instrumental, relational, and moral legitimacy. So not only do they want you to educate, like they want to know the product works, they want you to reduce stigma for disability, but they also want to know that you care about the disability social identity. And one way that this happens is that the social entrepreneurs disclose a relationship with disability. So that could be, relational kind of disclosure, like, oh, like Len had said, my daughter has Down syndrome, so this is why, I'm in this space. It could also be, I personally have a disability. They also expect you to engage deeply with the disability community, being active within, online groups, or just up to date with language and how to talk with the community. And they really want this above and beyond collaboration with end users, almost bigger and better than we would have seen in the past with other types of prototyping. So here's one example of disclosure. One social entrepreneur said, I think for people to trust a new brand doing something differently, I had to make it a bit more human, because otherwise, why would they trust me? Why would you trust a non-disabled person to start an adaptive brand? I needed people to understand that it was by them and for them. It wasn't just someone seeing a niche in the market and saying, gonna do that. So it's a little bit different way of persuading people. And then this was somebody who didn't have a disability themselves. And she said, I am open about that. We are very much aware we don't have a disability. We're always trying to connect with the end user and collaborate with people with lived experience. So to make up for the fact that they themselves don't have a disability, they are constantly collaborating. And the last way, moral legitimacy, they are being very authentic, very transparent in their processes and why this matters to them. So they're really trying to persuade that they're in it for the right reasons. And the other interesting part, even though all of these brands are trying to make money, so these are not brands that are charity cases. These are, we are in a fashion market. This is expensive work that we're trying to get done. They are still de-emphasizing the economic mission, which is this interesting tension that comes up for a social entrepreneur that is working with stigmatized, beneficiaries. This social entrepreneur stated, I didn't want it to be too commerce focused or too capitalistic. That was really important, because it is based on a community that I'm a part of. I just don't want to take and take. I want to give back. I want it to be a community resource as much as possible. So it's this idea that even though she's selling her product for a lot of money and she wants to survive, she lives in San Francisco, it's a very expensive part of the US, she still doesn't want it to be too commerce or too capitalistic, because that is a way of her persuading her customers that she's in it for the right reasons. So the last thing I want to just go over with you is this really interesting tension that comes up. Both groups that I described care that the product works, right? That's a given. But they also care that you're reducing stigma for their impairment. But what's interesting about reducing stigma is that if you have an impairment but don't identify with disability, that looks different than those that identify with disability, capital D. So on one hand, I have this, blue arrow going across the screen. Some people view disability as disempowering. There was this one case of a man who got Parkinson's. He was a football coach in the US. He ended up being diagnosed with Parkinson's, and his wife created these buttons that were magnetic so he could get easier to dress. When people would talk about disability, he would say, I'm not disabled. But he could still benefit from the product that his wife made, but he did not want to identify as disabled. So that is, to him, disability was not empowering. But then on the right side, you have those that really identify with disability, and that identity is very empowering for them. So in order to reduce stigma on the left side, when it's disempowering, you need to normalize. So these social entrepreneurs are de-emphasizing disability and treating their company as just this normal company that anyone can shop at, this universal design, that Nike shoe that everyone can wear, and it's super cool, and it just so happens that you can wear it too. But on the right side, if disability is super empowering, they're emphasizing celebrating disability. That's the focus. And if somebody else wants to use the product, okay, fine, but it's not made for those without disability. It was designed by and for people with disabilities. So hopefully you can see that difference. I have two examples here in terms of aesthetics. So on the left side, there is a man who is blind, and he was really concerned that, take a step back. The brand that created this shirt for him, she had said, oh, so you sometimes bump into like the wall and sometimes hit your arm. So then there was always a little bit of like wearing and tearing on his elbow. And she said, I can add a patch so that doesn't happen. And he said, I don't want a patch. I don't want it to look weird. I have a job and I want it to be just a button down, nice looking top. And she said, I can make this patch so it doesn't stand out and it just looks stylish, but it's effective. So that was a way that she was able to normalize so that his item wasn't drawing attention to his disability, it was just normalizing. But on the right hand side, there's a woman in a wheelchair, and you might think, oh, normalizing would be, just having a normal wheelchair, but she has this beautiful, colorful flower painted wheel cover. And for her, emphasizing that is a way for people to ask her questions and talk about her disability, talk about her wheelchair. And so that to her is destigmatizing. So there's two differences. There's one way I'm kind of like blending in, not drawing attention to myself. And the other way is, look at my, this isn't something to be ashamed of. And another way this happens is in marketing. And this is something I talked about earlier with Nike. On the left-hand side is this bra that the women on here, or anyone who wears a bra on here, knows that we still, for some reason, do bras in the back. And it's very difficult to reach back there, even as like somebody who can reach behind your back. So this bra has a connection in the front, and it doesn't use the hook and eye. So it's a lot easier to put on. And the way you can market this bra is for anyone, because it's much easier to put on for young people who are using their first bra to older women, not just for people with disabilities. So there's a choice to market this for everyone. And then compared to the right-hand side, this is a cup holder that attaches to a wheelchair. And the designer of that product was told that she should market that for anyone like who has a baby carriage or like a stroller, because moms could use that to like hold a glass. And this woman said, no, this was designed by and for people with wheelchairs. If a mom with a baby stroller wants to use it, she can, but that's not who I'm designing and marketing this toward. So there's two choices in marketing. So key takeaway, I think I'm good on time. My main research question was, how do social entrepreneurs in the adaptive apparel space garner legitimacy from the disability community? Ended up figuring out disability community maybe is, who am I talking about? Am I talking about identifying capital D? If I am, they must consider instrumental, relational, and moral legitimacy work tactics. So you have to persuade that the adaptive apparel is effective. You have to in some way promote the disability social identity, and you have to show that you're in it for the right reasons. You can't, be taking advantage of people, and at some way persuading people that you're not. The major challenge comes up is that not everyone is identifying as disabled or believes that they're a member of the disability community. And that's when we're seeing social entrepreneurs choosing to downplay disability in order to destigmatize for that population. But here we're running into that kind of tension of perhaps you're threatening relational and moral legitimacy for those that do identify as disabled. So that was, kind of a lot, the main takeaways. But thank you so much for your time.